Okay, welcome back, and in this lesson we're going to go a bit further, following up our previous lesson on slicing up breaks. So I've chosen to grab the intro to Sing 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 by Benny Goodman. You might recognise this. I'm just going to unwarp this and press play. So just like before, I'm going to find a sampler and I'm going to drag this loop into it. I'm going to boost the gain and turn it into slicing mode. For this example, I'm going to ask the sampler to create slices that I can play down to the beat that my project is currently at. And in this case, it's quarter notes, but I'm going to ask for eighth notes. So this probably won't work so well to start with. But it will give me something to work with. And so I'm just going to move around a few things. Maybe add a few. Cool. And in this case, I don't really want these end horn parts. Actually, maybe just that bit. Cool. So now I have some slices to work with. And like before, if I went down to created a MIDI clip, went down to C1 and added a note, I can start chromatically recreating the original like this. Add a beat here. Cool. So already it's slightly altered because I've chopped it up in a non-regular way, but nonetheless we got something similar to work with. So in this case, I might just get a bit playful. I'm going to get my tool here, and first I'm going to shorten these notes, and I'm just going to draw stuff. Because the fun part about working with samples is that you don't have to be intentional about every single thing you do. We can just play and find out what happens. Okay, that's very hectic. I'm going to stretch that out to be twice as long. So in this case, I'm going to tell my sampler to play through the sample so it doesn't stop. It just continues. We heard a few silent moments there. And I'm going to add some fade out, just like we did before. We can see we need to tidy up where the transients fall a little. Because, of course, no good drum sample actually fits on the grid. That's the whole point. We want to capture those micro rhythms and changes in precision that we otherwise call style. So we've got a workable breakbeat loaded up into this sampler, and I could play around with the MIDI a bit more. But I think today we're going to look about processing this sound. If I take a lot of compression and expansion, we can hear that there's a lot happening in this sample. Every beat, every hit has its own tone, its own rhythm, its own attack, and you couldn't really recreate this digitally by hand. Maybe you could, but it would take an awful lot of time, and we don't have that. We have music to make. So this is a great example of why I would use a sample. It has lovely vinyl hiss at the top. We can kind of hear the material, we can hear the medium it's been recorded into, and my brain is thinking of retro things and things from the past, which gives me some ideas as a composer to work with. So we're going to try and keep this vibe, but maybe tidy this up and make it sound a bit more modern. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to take a multiband compressor / expander. You'll find this in most or all modern DAWs as part of the stock effects. And if not, there's many out there you can go and grab for free. What I'm going to do is use the expansion section. So in Ableton, that's these bottom rows. And I'm going to turn this into a negative expansion or downwards expansion. And this is essentially a gate. So our job here is to gate each band of this sound. If this all sounds a little confusing to you, I advise you to pause the video and go down a rabbit hole of a few videos or articles about what multiband compressors do and what expansion is and what a gate is. You don't really need to know the scientific ins and outs of this technology, but maybe hearing what it's supposed to do will help you with this lesson. So I'm going to proceed assuming that you know what I'm talking about. Cool. I'm going to solo the bass band so we can only hear the low frequency sounds. Lovely. I'm going to downwards expand that. I'm dragging down on my mouse here in live. Can you hear how the sound, the decay of it has changed? It's shorter and sharper. There's a bit of space between the hits. I'll turn this off and back on. It's quite subtle, but we've removed some sound from this piece. I'll do the same with the mids. You notice I drag the threshold to just below where the sound is peaking. And finally, I'll do it with the high end. And I'm going to back off on the effect in the highs because I want to keep that lovely vinyl crackle. And now it's just bouncing a bit to the rhythm. We've lost a bit of volume, so I'll turn some up here. Cool, sounding very tight. Here's the original. I think maybe it's a bit intense, so I'm going to back off the amount before we move on. So essentially we've carved out some space where we can then enhance the sound to our liking. So the next thing I want to do is to add or change the tone. I feel that this is a bit muddy. Well, this area is a bit busy. I'm going to cut some of that away with an EQ. I'm going to boost the sub. Not that there's much going on there apart from rumble. But this bit here around 50 to 100, I'm going to boost that, or 150 even. And I'm finally going to boost the high end so we get more crackle. You often want to scroll around for a sweet spot. Okay. I like it's got a bit more punch. Another thing we could do is add saturation. Here's a stock saturator from Ableton. Where I add a little bit of grits and harmonics We could also use things like overdrive or distortion or whatever. It's a bit wild for what I'm thinking of. If the listener or watcher has sound toys, I personally really enjoy Little Radiator for this kind of thing. This adds a little bit of, harmonics, and it's quite subtle, but I like it a lot. Okay, finally, I want to add some reverb. It feels a bit dry now. And I want to mask a bit of the digital processing I've done. One trick I want to throw at you is that when we're working with samples, especially old ones, they're often like this, quite boxy and muddy. And if we're going to apply reverb, we should be careful. One thing that's really helpful is to turn the reverb into mono. So there's no difference between the left and the right speakers or channels. So I've done that with the stereo knob, but most reverbs allow you to do this. I've turned it all the way up so we only hear the verb. And I actually want something, a much smaller space. This comes with chorus on it. Let's lose that. And I'll lose a bit of the low going in. Cool. And if I just back that off and add some in, we can just hear that tail. Finally, I'm going to glue compress. This is an SSL style compressor. Any compressor will actually do. And I'm just going to give it a gentle squeeze. Okay, let's turn all of this off so we can A/B what we've done. And on again. So in retrospect, I think I've gone a bit wild with the sub there. Sounds a bit more sensible. I like it. So now we've transformed this drum break. Now we have a sound that is a little bit different and gives us new ideas. I might jam my pattern again. So I just played around with my computer keyboard then. I'm going to hit record. Here's the metronome. Whatever. I'll just quantize that because I'm not so good at playing the keyboard. Finally, for my last trick, I'm going to find a kick sample. That will do. And I've loaded that into a sampler, and I'm going to draw a very simple kick pattern like this. I'm going to add a compressor to the end of my sample chain. Route that from the kick. Now this will bounce to this kick drum. Let's listen to it. I've just thrown a load of hi-hat loops on just to bring this club beat to life. And I've done that so I can mute our work and show you that this is a lovely way of taking a very banal kind of loop-based club beat. Let's lose that annoying hi-hat. And spicing it up and giving it some kind of vibes and color and ideas. Excellent. So I encourage you to find things you like. Maybe it's a little 4 beats break in the middle of a funk song. Maybe it's a demonstration video of a new Tamer tom-tom rack. Maybe it's an existing piece of electronic music that you really like the beat from. Grab it, put it in a sampler, process it in the way I've showed you today, and build things around it. Use it as a kind of starting point, a kickoff to a composition process. So I'll leave it there and I'll see you next time.